Okay.
Ron is an executive chairman of Manners Group, a firm providing consultancy in the mining industry. He has more than 50 years of involvement with Australia's resource and property industries. He was the founder and chairman of Precious Mining, which produced over 1.25 million ounces of gold, and the founding chairman of De Grey Mining. Ron maintains his interest in the resource industry as a fellow of the Australasian Institute of Mining and Metallurgy, and as a fellow of the Australian Institute of Company Directors. He is also an active investor, emeritus chairman, and inductee of the Australian Mining Hall of Fame. The $35 million project completed as part of Australia's centenary celebrations. In 2005, Ron was inducted as the mining legend at the Excellence in Mining and Exploration Conference, and in 2008 became a patron of that organization. Please welcome Ron Manners.
我简单介绍一下 ，Ron Manners 是我们简单的讲就是我们西澳矿业的一个元老，也是这方面在荣誉榜上都列了名字的前辈。他曾在他手下创建了很多的矿业公司，从各种矿业的资产呐，还有从金矿等等各种不同的矿产资源。他之所以称他前辈，他不单是在公司上、企业上，他也而且设计了几家基金会，就是在整个这个矿业行业中做了很多贡献。所以呢，现在他又从考古里来，考古里是我们矿业发源的，很多人都从那边过来的，尤其是成功的人。所以呢，我们现在如果谈到矿业中，基本上没有什么不知道他的。所以今天能够请他来给我们当演讲的，也是非常幸运的。谢谢。
Yes, may I also add that Ron is a raconteur, an author, a poet, and a joyous libertarian.
而且还很多才多艺。
And I thought I better, name like Manners, I better be polite. Okay, over to you, Ron.
I must say, I was maybe I was inspired with your talking. That reminded me of something that occurred last night. I was telling some friends how I was interviewing a person whom I admired greatly, and at the end of the interview they said to me, "Do you know what else we have in common apart from all the things we've discussed?" And I was curious, and he said, "We both had happy childhoods." He said, "Do you know the significance of a happy childhood? A happy childhood lasts forever." And you and I have that in common.
所以刚才说的是，他如果问问他们两个成功的人，然后他刚才听到咪咪的故事，他心里有心得。他说，如果想想两个人相同，成功都有各种不同的，但是要找相同点。他说，我们两个人都有十分快乐的童年。无论是艰辛也好，贫穷和富有之好，但是最关键是要快乐的童年。快乐的童年可以给有很多的记忆，然后你一生都受益。谢谢 ，Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I mean, obviously you are a well-known identity in the mining industry in Australia.
I was.
Yes, still is. And you've got a strong family connection in Kalgoorlie. Coming from 4 generations of involvement in the mining industry. And you've been marked by several awards, including elected the mining legend in 2005. Can you please share with us your career highlights? And of that, which one of that is your most important career?
It's too much, Jimmy. I've written a book. The book's here on sale for $70. I've had such a mixed up career, and every single chapter is about a part of my career. But each chapter has something in common. Any successes that I've had have always involved, and again, similar to Mimi, it always has involved developing a small team of people who you can trust you really can trust anything with. And if you can work with a small team of people that all trust each other, you can achieve remarkable things far beyond anything that anyone as an individual could ever achieve. And I think that's really the success that links all those vast experiences of experiences, not just mining, but involved in the industry of money laundering and in the industry of farming and engineering. So it's always been that common thread, that small team of people you can trust. And today I've got that wonderful team in our Mannkal Foundation, where we've sent so far about 600 young people to internships and conferences around the world and in Australia. And one such a young person got me involved with in Facebook a few years ago. He said, "Ron, you want to talk to people our age, you've got to be on Facebook." But I didn't particularly want to be on Facebook, but he said, "No, you have to be." So I said, you can be me on Facebook. So, I mean, I had that much trust in him, and now he's graduated. He's an economist working in New York. He's still working on my Facebook, managing it 3 hours a day. He's still me on Facebook. Haven't you got to trust somebody when you can say, you can be me on Facebook? The stuff that he sends back things to me, he said, "Ron, I get a lot of your friends, old girlfriends and stuff like that." I said, you pass them back to me and I'll handle them. all the other stuff, Luke, is yours.
所以我们刚才问就是说你这个成功的，已经说2005年被西澳认为行业中认为是我们这边的传奇人物，尤其是矿业。这个成功的秘诀，他说你可以看这个书，这个书里面基本上包括很多章节，就是说这一步一步怎么走过来的。但是要真归纳一下，谢德汉他有一点就是从明明王女士刚才讲过的，很多是一个很好的团队，建立一个很好的团队，一个很好的亲情，而且这些团队达到一个程度，就是说你可以相信他们。他有一个团队专门帮助他安排 Facebook， 因为他有一个 Mannkal 这个基金会，这个基金会的目的是培养年轻人在行业中有所发展，但是人家给他提的建议说，你这个基金会如果要做得好，一定要上 Facebook， 年轻人一定要上 Facebook。他说我不懂，你来帮我管。他说这个管理 Facebook 的事情是很个人化的，也很有意思的，而且你不知道什么样的信息人家会来。他就跟他们经常开玩笑，有好多女朋友介绍过来，其他你们来帮我管。但是基本上讲，就是说一个是要很趟的风趣，还有一个问题就是说你要针对什么市场，有针对什么不同的团队。他管理他的 Facebook 的主要原因是因为他的基金会是培养年轻人，怎么样去找到这些年轻人，要通过年轻人可以熟悉的渠道。那么这些东西来讲，所以他也是很有意思的。I think I booked your interview on the Facebook. So, oh, Ron is there. Can I have the interview? That's how it started.
You may be surprised. Let me let you into the secret. I mean, Ron may not be in Facebook, but it's definitely in YouTube.
Yes,
and
he
he had
is.
about 148,000 hits. Ron, my next question to you is that you're famous in the industry, as I mentioned earlier, and you're well known for your anti-government crusade and anti-bureaucracy crusade, right?
I would never think that I'm anti-government. No, that's not correct. I think the government has a place, a small place in our lives. But rather than being anti-government, I'm pro-individual, pro-people. And I think we really should be doing more for ourselves instead of running to the various governments, getting them to do it for us. It's expensive and not as effective as doing it for ourselves. I'll give you an example. We've got a government now who tells us what sort of light bulbs we can buy and use. Now, aren't we old enough to go and buy our own light bulbs? If they're more efficient, we'll buy those. If different shapes, we'll buy those. We don't have to be told by a government what light. We don't have to be told by the government what sort of shower heads we're allowed to use in our home or what sort of flushing toilets we've got. these are individual decisions that should be left to free people of their own choice. So I don't want to labour the point, but we've created a huge problem for ourselves. The average cost of government, the government used to take 14% of our income back about 19 at the middle of last century. Now they're taking 47%. The problem is we've got this on our back. We're carrying this great government burden around. We'd love it if they just did the things that we can't do for ourselves. And there are things like that, defending the country, the police forces, and the title system, arbitrating and resolving disputes when we have a bit of an argument. Sure, the government's like a referee and it does a fine job, but don't get them involved in the telling us what sort of light clothes we can buy. They got more important things to do, haven't they?
Yes, it's actually, I like that comments because that also share ourselves with a cultural perspective. Yeah. Like coming from an Asian country ourselves, naturally we've grown up, say, respect the government. Even you might have disagreement or different opinion, you keep it to yourself. You don't actually able to say that. You are now allowed to give that opportunity to say a lot of things. But in Australia, there is a lot of encouragement, individual opinion to open, express freedom of speech. In that way, allow our personality to grow. That's actually in terms of comments. If you go to Asia, you ask someone to talk about the country or the government, lots of them avoid that topic. They say, let's talk about the weather, let's talk about the culture, let's talk about anything else, let's talk about money making. But in terms of Australia, you can actually freedom of speaking. I don't think this is right. I disagree to this. And allow you to do that without feeling very, very insecure.
I think you've hit it on the head. That's why Australians are very welcome, not only just in the mining industry, all around the world, but we're very welcome. I've been, since November, I've been very fortunate and very honoured to be almost the lone Australian at economic and cultural conferences in Turkey, in Israel, last week in Shanghai, and in a couple of weeks' time in Prague, and then a few weeks' time after that in New York. They always like to have an Australian there, and I really, this time, the last time I went away, I wondered why. And it's because, and we don't think the Australians, the people that are born in Australia are not aware of this, but not many countries or not many nationalities in the world are not taught. We Australians are not taught to hate anyone from birth. We just judge people as they are. Only after experiencing all these other cultures, you get, I mean, the Irish, the people of the North, they hate each other, the Jews hate the Arabs and vice versa. I mean, sometimes there's ill feeling between the Chinese and the Japanese and the Koreans. Koreans don't like either. I mean, it's a really, but Australians, we're just born, we're pure. And I think I got presented with this tie in the tie.
I'm trying to decipher. It's sophisticated.
In Shanghai. Gloria helped me translate it. When it was given to me, they said, "This is for you. This is because you're an Australian and your heart is as pure as a white flower." I didn't believe that. I thought it might be something quite bizarre.
If you want to know if there's anything offensive, I think that's a poetry, right? Just show it off. It's a poetry. 所以刚才我们简单的呢，就是说，有些人认为 Ron 好像对政府有他自己的意见，很多西方会有点是反政府的。他说不完全是反政府，而是他觉得在澳洲，有这个自由度，他每个人可以谈出他自己对政府的看法。这个一点呢，就是说有一点，他有些事情他认为政府不需要干涉的。比如说，现在有一些政府的机制告诉大家怎么样去什么样的章程，它制一个章程告诉你什么样的电灯泡是最好。他觉得这种东西来讲，我们已经都很成熟的承认，基本上知道什么样的电灯泡，我们自己有权利去选，不需要政府还要来管理。因为政府每年要从老百姓身上收取14%左右的税收，好多税收是要用于政府作为国家管理机制。这些机制来讲，有些东西完全可以权力下放，让老百姓自己去做，这个注意。 刚才我也问他，我说这个你炒作这个想法实际上是很有意思。从文化交流上面讲，亚洲的老百姓我很少在政治上发表见解，因为我不知道会因为在政治上的见解会给我们带来什么样的后果。但是我们也是从小到大，长大都是要尊重我们的政府，尊重我们的领导。但是在澳大利亚好像就是大家比较有言论自由这方面。他说很大程度也有从历史看过来，历史来讲，澳大利亚人基本上从小到大这个生产过程中，生长过程中没有人这个教他怎么去恨，也不需要去恨。但是他在国际上旅行，很多国家他觉得种族之间历史缘故，还有宗教缘故等等，好多人从小到大他有这个根深蒂固的有这个恨的概念，或者是家长教，或者是历史教。比如说中国对日本会有这个根深蒂固的，就从二战定下来的。在爱尔兰，它北爱尔兰和南爱尔兰有它这个宗教上等等各方面的原因，还有一些比如说中东那边有些这些呢，就是说从小孩从耳濡目染的看到这些恨和怨恨，这个在成长过程中会对心各方面有不同的影响。但是澳大利亚人从传统来讲，从他文化来讲，很大程度上没有这个恨这个种子在他成长过程中去放下，对他们来讲实际上是很幸运的。也像咪咪来讲，在澳洲生长长大，生活有很大情况是很幸运，大家彼此之间是很友好的。这个没有恨的这个因素，可能也是有一个原因的。谢谢，谢谢。
Thank you, Ron. Ron, economics and libertarian issues are your passion, right? And let's talk a bit about.
Oh, it's called survival.
Let's talk a bit more about you being the founder and executive director of the Mannkal Economic Education Foundation, which you founded in 1997. Let's talk a bit more about Mannkal.
Well, I guess it was just to expand on my hobby of economics, free market economics, and I've been lucky that people showed an interest in me and gave me opportunities to be exposed to these ideas, which are not common in the education system in Australia. We're really taught to conform, to be like peas in a pod, and all be the same. And even in the universities, it used to be. The universities was the home of intense questioning, but not so much today. It's all about political correctness when the students are afraid to ask questions for fear of being stamped on. And we've sent these 600 young people away to these various things, and to my surprise, we're still in touch with many of them, and they come to our functions that we run quite a few functions. We had one last night at UWA, the week before at Notre Dame, and they say what they enjoy coming to these things. They can talk to very smart young people, and they can question. They can ask these questions, and they tease the answers out. They're seeking better answers. And I struck this in Shanghai. We had 120 people from 20 different countries. 60 of them were the brightest young Chinese university economics students that you could imagine. Now, they all had part-time jobs, but they weren't with Kentucky Chicken or in DVD stores, and which sometimes our young people do that. That's fine, it's good training, but these people had jobs in commodity dealing firms, and they were all involved in what's happening on the other side of the world. They were smart. They all knew exactly the causes for the global financial crisis. They all knew what to guard against. They'd all read the books that were the best explanations of the Great American Depression. They knew it all. They were all determined to make sure their government, their leaders in China, didn't plunge their economies into debt. They all knew that stimulus and debt financing was not the path to prosperity. And I talked to them every evening at the meals, and I said, these young people know far more than most of Australia's very best economic journalists, the stuff we read in the paper. I was amazed. I was learning so much more from them than they were learning from me, and I was supposed to be there helping them. So, but it's very humbling, very humbling to get this feedback from young people, because the young people also in Australia, they're very conscious that all this current generation, my generation, all we're doing is leaving them with a whole heap of debt. They know each of those young people start life with a debt of $48,000. My parents didn't do that to me. They gave me an even break. I got an even start. But boy, this is a rough deal. Nobody really talks in our newspaper and our media about Australia having the highest level of household debt in the world. Why don't we talk about that? That's a problem. We don't have a real government debt as some other countries do, but we do have a huge household debt. The government's offloaded the debt onto us people, saying we've got to spend, we've got to stimulate the economy by buying flat screen TVs and stuff. Well, it doesn't make any sense. So the younger people are better at picking the fraudulent nature of this deficit spending than the people of my generation. So that's why I like spending more time with them.
Yeah, but what would you compare? If you compare Australian student, I think when you're young, you have the desire to learn a lot of new things.
Yeah.
You're curious about the world and things outside your normal area. Do you think what's driving the Chinese student or the Asian student and what drives the Australian student? Is it driving in the equivalent pace or slightly different? What's the reason behind that?
I thought about that, particularly while I was there this time, and I think there's a sense of urgency that they have that we don't. If we get it wrong, it doesn't really matter, because we'll limp on.
Yeah.
As we've done before, we've had some lost decades where Australia has just limped through. We've come out okay. We take time and give us another 10 years and we'll start back where we were 10 years before. It's not serious. But I think in China they know that and they're watching those Arab Spring revolts with great interest. They're watching, if they don't get it right, they've only got one chance, because the people, and there's a lot of them, will rise up, and you can't suppress that sort of thing. So they've got to get it right, and they don't have a second chance. So I think there's a sense of urgency that I felt there that's not here in Australia.
But do you feel that it's actually growing, that sense of urgency?
Yes.
Compared to 10 years ago, no worries. If you don't do it today, you can do it next week, it's still there. Yeah. But now people might think if you don't do it today, tomorrow may not be there. You know, that sense of urgency where they're engaging with Asian country is starting to seep into Australian society as well?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, we're pretty comfortable. I mean, we talked about Australia being the best country in the world to live. It's fantastic. Everything's good. I mean, we are laid back, and that's why we're here. That's why we're here in Australia, isn't it? I mean, it's just such a fantastic country. It's a fantastic country where we wake up every morning and everything's pretty damn good.
Yeah. Following what has been said, you know, the Western media has dubbed this century as the Asian century. It's more of the Western media than the Asian media. Because I suppose it's not so much broadcasting in Asia, because I think they already know it. The question is that do you think that Australia has done enough to engage with Asia in this Asian century?
Well, I think one of the great things that Western Australia did to engage with Asia was to stay off daylight saving time. At least the whole state's on Beijing time. Well, it's on China time. I mean, it's the same time, east to west, north to south, same time in China. It's Perth time. It's fantastic. And everyone, I think as a result of that, Perth, and I'm sure Damien will vouch for this, Perth is picking up about 90% of all the consulting work out of China and out of Asia, because at least they know what time it is here. They can deal with us. The other guys keep buggering around with their clocks twice a year, and they don't do this in Asia. You know, so well, it's a small thing, but it's been commented to me so often that it's a small thing repeated in so many ways. It's significant.
对，所以我们刚才说的就是说，问 Ron 的这个整体看法，他经常去 去海外旅行去讲课，他对经济和自由贸易这方面的来讲兴趣很大，所以他在讲课中，他觉得在中国给他的印象最深，就是中国的学生在学习过程中问的问题最尖锐，很多问题尖锐，比如说对金融危机的问题，对世界全球的经济情况都有很尖锐的问题。他觉得这些学生的头脑非常聪明，他说你们50%的人知道的比我们一般的人要多，就说你们的知识都是怎么来的。而且另一方面，他同样的一个情况，在澳大利亚的时候，我们的学生好像就没有想得这么深。所以我刚才就问他，我说你认为这个后面的原因是什么？他说很大情况下呢，一个是就是说有一个紧迫感，好像在中国，好像在很多的第三世界国家或发展中国家的孩子有一种很强的紧迫感，就是说你人生只有一次机会，做事情只有一次机会，如果这个机会你不掌握好，不做好，那么下一个机会不会来。但是在澳洲，有可能是因为我们的环境比较优越一点，而且很多紧迫感还没有在根深蒂固中长出来，所以很多人觉得今天不做，明年还有机会；今年不做，明年还有机会。所以很大情况下，我刚才有问他，我说你觉得从10几年前到现在这个发展，尤其是澳洲跟亚洲接轨的发展，这个情况下是不是会有这个紧迫感逐步会有加剧？他目前来讲，觉得澳洲的紧迫感加剧的还不大，因为还是比较放松。很多情况下，尽管跟亚洲的接轨，开始有更多的移民或者跟亚洲的文化接轨，但是澳洲还是很放松的，就是没有在像亚洲你到去的那种紧迫感，很多是一种积极向上的动力。就是说，因为你有这种情况，你想把事情做好，所以同一件事，大家都说，比如说同学之间的竞争，同学之间的挑战。这个实际上是一个好的动力，能够把这些事情做的努力会做得更好。他觉得好多事情我们还可以跟亚洲去学的，去多学一些东西。因为他在北京还上海教书讲课，讲了几节课，觉得他这个经验真的让他很感动，就是关于这个学生在这事情上的努力和奋斗。
There's more than just, of course, the daylight saving time. I think I've been going back and forth to China since 1962, but particular significance was a conference run by the Bank Credit Suisse analyst out of Canada. They had a group of us going to Beijing and Shanghai in I think 1989. It was when we were sort of saying this China whole thing is emerging. You know, where do we go, and how does Australia?
Do you feel the emergence at that time?
And how does Canada? Canada and Australia were part of this thing. How do we embrace this emerging China instead of it being a mystery? It was a mystery to many of us, and since then I've been keeping in touch, and this is all. It's all coming together, and the momentum is building, because look at the number of conferences, look at the number of delegations, look at the direct flights. Cathay run 2 flights a day, many days, and there's a new, there's an Air China, it's running a direct flight. You fly straight there. I mean, this is we are engaging not only through mining but through every aspect, through education, and I just see so many Australians, and again, Australians that travel and are engaged in commerce like that are our greatest ambassadors.
But I saw a lot of Australians started going to China now for study, to learn how Chinese works, and also to work there.
Sure.
So even take on the local languages, and they speak fluent like locals. So Australians started actually going up there to experiencing what's it like.
This is taking things seriously.
Yes, they're taking it seriously, and that's actually taking quite some time in the process in the past 10 years. And I think you probably watch Olympics and all that. You can see in that spirit of Chinese, used to be called sick man of Asia because of opium wars and all that. Until, in Hong Kong we have all these things about opium war and Hong Kong's return to China. Now you look at the Olympic, China probably on the second in terms of ladder, and they want to prove to the British we do have a strong body. We can actually take up a lot of challenges. So not only from the economic perspective, also from the athletic, from sports, from every area, they trying to prove to the world we are coming up, and to prove, I think once to prove themselves, also proving for the world that they are. That also tie in with the economic development plan, isn't it?
It does, and there's another plus too, that I think the Chinese and Australians have the same sense of humour.
How do you code that?
we react by laughing. If someone, you walking up there and you fell over and broke your leg, I'd laugh. Because, but it's not that we're not greatly concerned, but we laugh, so we laugh at the same.
所以我们刚才说的就是经济的发展，尤其是中国，他在中国这些旅行过程中看到中国的变化、中国的发展，年轻人的蒸蒸向上，想闯出一番事业，而且现在有更多的澳大利亚人到中国去。与其说中国人到澳洲来，而且澳大利亚人到中国去，真正去生活、去学习，甚至去住，然后充分了解到澳大利亚的，就是说澳大利亚怎么样在中国建立自己的一个机会。好大程度上呢，我也跟他讲到，从奥林匹克这个最近的奥林匹克活动来看，就是说中国被认为是东亚病夫。这回奥林匹克这东亚病夫的名字是因为英国人把鸦片带到中国，清朝的时候，然后中国人吸了很多鸦片。但这回奥林匹克，在我个人来看，奥林匹克是在英国举行的，中国人也很想证实大英帝国的中国人不再是东亚病夫，我们的经济强盛，我们的身体健康，很大程度上呢，在各个方面我们都会赶上来，都会证明，也是给他们证明，也是给我们自己证明。然后 Ryan 认为，在这种目前这种发展形势，尤其是中国这种睡狮醒的这种趋势，还是有很长的路要发展，而且有很大的潜力。他觉得这方面还是很激动人心的。因为作为一个澳洲的矿业前辈来讲，他看到的觉得还是很激动的。
Ron, you're a prolific writer. You're author of a few books, right?
Yeah.
And you're even a poet.
Yeah.
Of recent days. Now, in
my next book, my fifth book, will be poetry.
Poetry, that's good. And in one of your speeches not too long ago, you made some references to Lao Tzu and Confucius.
Oh yes.
How have these two Chinese sages inspired you?
Well, I got interested in Lao Tzu as a philosopher when I was in Taiwan about 1972, I think, and I actually bought a book on Lao Tzu that I was going to quote. A remarkable philosopher, but he's from the 6th century BC, and he was a contemporary of Confucius. But it's remarkable, and this came up at this conference in Shanghai last week. The big economic debates in Australia and in England and in America between the two economic schools generally, you call it one follows the economist called Keynes, and his economic theories are the government should spend. It should go into deficit financing, it should prop up the economy, and that there's a multiplier and everyone will benefit. Too bad about the debt, because you can pass that to the kids, that's too bad. But on the other side, and I call him the good guy, he's the fellow, my favourite economist was a fellow called Hayek, and he says you've got to be tidy, you've got to run your country's finances just the same as you run your household finances, because it will just creep up behind you if you let things get untidy and hit you on the back of the head. So he's the good guy. Strangely enough, the debate in China is not so much between Keynes and Hayek, it's between Confucius and Lao Tzu. Because Confucius was pretty much the big government guy, so I thought this debate had only been going on for about 50 years. But the debate's been going on for 2,600 years between Confucius and Lao Tzu. Confucius thinks the bigger government is the answer, and Lao Tzu thinks the less government the better. And I've got one of Lao Tzu's quotes here somewhere that I'd like to quote from, because if you wonder why this guy's my favourite philosopher, it's because this is what he said only 2,600 years ago. Why are the people starving? Because the rulers eat up all the money in taxes. Therefore the people are starving. Why are the people rebellious? Because the rulers interfere too much. Therefore, they are rebellious. So that's why I like it.
I can't believe that's a 6 BC.
That's fabulous, isn't it?
Yes.
But would you like to translate that bit, and then I'll tell you about Shanghai.
OK， 所以他说他对经济上非常有兴趣。西方的经济它有2套的争议的，一个是以债权来做这个主导的社会的主导趋势，还是就是说你管理国家应该像管理家庭一样，什么事情都要积极的主动的去不要要债。所以在西方争议这个问题的时候，在中国他这回经历了一些事情，就是在争议老子跟这个孔夫子的这个观念。孔夫子认为政府越大越有机制，国家越强盛。老子认为越小越简单越好。所以呢，他想我跟大家先说一下这个事情，也是觉得他还想在这边他有他自己的想法，因为他在这方面来讲，从他的引荐刚才那个老子那个诗上，Can I see?
That's the exact.
Oh, that's the one. 他让我先翻译一下，他说，This is 老子 right？ 是老子说过一句话，他想给大家翻译一下，就是说，当人民饥饿的时候，那么是因为政府收了很多的税，那么这老百姓会饥饿。当老百姓起义造反的时候，为什么？是因为政府干涉过多，因此老百姓才造反。所以他想把这个事情来一会儿再分析一下他自己的想法。
So you can imagine my delight in Shanghai when we were confronted with a famous Chinese scholar who expanded on the Lao Tzu theme up there, and recently out of the USA has come a YouTube on called a rap YouTube, and it's turned into rap terms this economic debate between Keynes and Hayek, and they've turned it into a rap tube where they're actually boxing in the ring to see who's winning. But this Chinese scholar, whose name is Juning Liu, he had a similar sort of rap debate. He had one actor acting as Confucius and the other acting as Lao Tzu, and turned it into an after-dinner presentation between the two philosophies, the battle between the big government people and the small government people. And I was absolutely thrilled that that's a very ongoing debate and a very lively debate there. And we're going to put a lot of Lao Tzu stuff up on our website because he just, it could have been written yesterday, some of his stuff.
But would you think Confucius' idea or concept actually deep-rooted in every Chinese?
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
In terms of respect old, respect the family value, and respect the seniority, the hierarchy, lots of them actually inherited from that. If you look at Chinese, doesn't matter you're Chinese from China, Chinese from Southeast Asia, we have a hierarchy, we have natural respect to the elder and senior, we have respect to knowledge and experience. And those is deep-rooted with Confucius' idea. What do you think the influences from Lao Tzu into our modern life, that concept in coming all from 6 BC to today?
Well, Lao Tzu was obviously a rebel of the Henry David Thoreau style, and he was the founder of Taoism. And
so it's about yin and yang, the balance.
Yeah, looking back there, all you could do was withdraw yourself to peaceful serenity and not engage. You couldn't be a rebel. You couldn't fight back in those days. And I think that he formed a lot of followers that just simply withdrew from community life and active life. But if with a bit of courage, you don't have to withdraw. You can be a bit of a rebel, and you can live your own life without retreating, which is we're lucky to be living in these times.
Doing charity work like me. 所以我刚才问他，就说孔夫子的这个观念，在我们华人的心里，就是说在我们的从小到大的这个生活中是有很大的影响的。无论是中国的华人、海外的华人，好多地方，比如说我们敬老爱幼， 尊重知识，这都是孔夫子的一套的学术。另一方面，我问他老子在我们生活中的想，他说老子作为这个道教的这个创始人了，很大程度上不但是讲阴阳的平衡，还讲到从很多地方来抽身出来，能够静修静养。所以很多情况有可能看起来是被动，但是呢，是从危难中或很大最紧张的情况，他能够退身出来，有不同自己的一套想法。所以这个呢，也是另一套非常好的东西。比如说，像你刚才 ，for example, the philosophy say withdraw yourself from the situation. Can you elaborate a bit more so I can withdraw from? For example, if you're in the business, how you actually apply the Lao Tzu's?
Well, you can still see way back then. If you were rebellious or if you came up with some ideas that didn't fit, you probably lost your life.
And your family's life as well. Everyone
it was serious stuff. But now you can argue. Okay. Now, really, to continue this discussion, I'm going to invite this scholar, Juning Liu, to come to Perth to continue this discussion because he understands fully. I asked him the question whether Lao Tzu is perhaps a more of a regional philosopher because he appeared to me to be very popular in Taiwan, but unheard of at that time in the mid-70s in China. He said that wasn't entirely correct, and there was a problem in China with burning books and things like that. Yeah. So there's a lot of people that just disappeared off the face of the earth from the passing it down. But it's all a little bit open now, so they openly discuss this stuff. So I'll invite this guy down. I'd like to have him down because I haven't finished my discussion with him.
Very good. 因为他在中国碰到了一个非常一个学者，觉得他谈的很多问题写的文章非常有创意。比如说就老子事情的研究，就是说怎么样能够把自己侧身出来，从看到事情从不同的角度来看，创造自己新独特独有的思维方式。有些这维方式可能被认为有一种反抗精神，因为你有独特性，你跟别人想的不一样，你跟人做事方法不一样。但是就是这种精神呢，也是很有宝贵之处的。所以呢，我觉得有种东西，甚至西方的精神，它给大家很多的自由性、独立性，创造自己独特的思维，也是成功的一个成功的秘诀。很多人说成功不是在于做别人做的事，而做一跟别人不一样的事，但是自己很有独特见解。当然，在成功最开始的时候可能会很辛苦，因为大家不认为你在做些很有意义的事情。但是如果你有这个独特的想法，对自己有信心，还是能够创出一个新的天地来。他说他会有机会把这个我们大陆来的这个研究者到这边来跟我们大家分享一下，就是说关于老子啊，或者是在现代生活中的他这些理论的应用，还是他因为他跟他的研究啊或者是交谈才刚刚开始，觉得很多地方非常有意义。Thank you.
So, when is this discussion taking place? And it's going to be done in English?
Oh, this was in Shanghai last year. It was done in English, yes.
Okay.
Very good.
Yeah.
And he's coming to Perth?
Well, I'm about to invite him.
That'll be good.
But he'll come because we both felt that we hadn't completed our discussions.
That's very good. That's very good.
You're going to let this the people in the room know so they can attend the discussion.
What's our website? Mannkal.org.
他很想把这个中国的，所以我刚才问他，就是说他事业中有很多挑战，他能够记忆着，就是说特别明显的最大的挑战。他说那时候70几年的时候，他全身心的投入到一个镍的这个矿产资源的发展，还组织了一个非常优秀的团队。但是没有想到，唯一没有估计好的就是那个资源的那个高峰期已经过了，所以呢，那个时候的确是很难，因为他看到自己的员工工作那么好，当然这个资源的高峰期过了以后，他要付这些薪水，要养活这些人，另一方面又担心怎么样去往前走，所以那个时候他跑到美国去欧洲去买一些很新的资源的机器来回来进行开发，然后无论如何把这个事情从很低潮的时候慢慢再重新做起来。但是这个通过那次以后呢，其他还有几次相似的这种在矿业上的经历，但是基本上就没有让他觉得可以吓倒他，因为有一次的经历，他也会用这个经历来鼓励自己下一次能做得更好，而且不会 那个时候他说，基本上那个时候觉得他自己真的很吓，不知道怎么办好了，所以他跑到海外去看这些机会。所以我刚才问他，我是不是跑到离开国家去到国外去申请？他说也是，但是主要原因是找更多的机会来回来挽救现在这个困境中的公司。So that's quite a spirit coming back, saving the company from the trouble. Yeah. So do you think that sort of experience does benefit life because make you stronger, make you think ahead, or more observant to the environment?
Well, nobody's going to save you. You've got to do it yourself.
对，所以它很大的原理也是说认为在生意上就是说你要自己帮自己，你不能完全靠大家别人去帮你。就像刚才说的，政府老百姓自己要能够帮助自己，政府也会做事情，但是不要把自己全身的希望都寄托在政府帮你做什么，你也要自己来帮助自己。So that's basically people you need to help yourself with what you do. Yeah. And you have been living in Hong Kong as well. You mentioned that in the 70s.
I had some trouble with the taxation department in the late 70s, and it was necessary to. It was necessary to go and work somewhere else, so I was in Hong Kong for a fair while.
And what do you think actually living in Hong Kong in terms of that time as Australian?
It was fantastic.
In a different culture.
Absolutely fantastic. I was. The 7 years I was on the run, I suppose, were probably, I look back now and they're the best 7 years of my life. But I tell you, I mean, my kids would go to school and they would ask what their father does. You know, at school you get the question, what does your father do? And they didn't know. And I felt it was really time to come home, so I wrote a very polite letter to the taxation department saying, listen, you're not getting anything out of me the way you're carrying on now. If you tear up the file, I'll come back and join the workforce again, and you can tax me all you like, you know. And they wrote back and said, okay. So I came back and really started again, and my business was running, the family business was running, because I had this neat little team of people running that I could trust.
Yes.
So, but it's just the boss wasn't there.
Yeah. So 他也是我问他在香港住了一段7几年。尤其是那7几年的时候，他因为那时候跟税务局有了一些摩擦，然后就跑到香港去。然后呢，好大程度上呢，觉得也是说，因为他孩子也长大来问他在香港，他说在香港的经历非常好，也是，但是也是当时没有想到，因为在这边会有这个情况才去的。但是香港的经历对他来讲也是很有意义上，很有意义的。而且回来以后呢，他觉得能够回到澳洲跟税务局交涉好了以后回来，重新起自己的事业。所以他来讲，虽然是我们的传奇人物，他的事业也是有大起大落的。而且另一情况下来讲，他说在那个最关键的时候，他也十分感激他的自己的那个团队，那个精锐的团队帮他在那个关键时候把事业扛过来。就像咪咪刚才讲过，在最困难的时候，他的合同商能够说没有付钱，我也要继续帮你做，这里面有很大的信任。甚至在没有他在这边的时候，也可以把中国做得很好。好多情况下也是说，人在这个整个事业的成功中是很重要的。And also you have a bit of Asian culture experience. Consider Jenny wasn't here today because she's from Malaysia.
My wife is very Asian. She thinks that I'm more Asian than she is, but she's very Asian.
Yeah, she's from Malaysia.
Delightfully so. I'm so lucky to have a wife like Jenny.
Yeah, good.
And you could finish off your answer to the question.
Oh, you asked me who I sort of admired in business. But I thought about that. It's not a single person. It's not a group of people that have these qualities in common. The style of people, I think, are like. I mean, there's some locals. There's too many, but there's a lot of them in Perth. It's like Stan Perrin, like the late Michael Kalis, the late Keith Parry, who was one of my mining heroes, Sir Avi Parvo. And there's a whole range of the younger generation coming up, but what they've got in common is that they create wealth, they create enterprise, and they create they realise it's more satisfying to create wealth than steal it. You know, a lot of people think it's easier to steal than to actually earn it, but there's a sheer joy in the creativity of business, and I think that's what I love about business. It's the creativity of it. It's not the mundane shuffling numbers and bits of paper. It's the creativity that goes with being in business. They're the people I admire, and I think in common with all of them, there's a little bit of, they're probably not conscious of Lao Tzu, but there's a little bit of equality in them. And I think in the front I've made a note here in the Lao Tzu book that one of his wise sayings was that it's the virtue of a good leader. And it's of a good leader, when you're gone, they say to themselves, well, he's gone, but it doesn't matter because we did it ourselves. So that you can create in the spirit of almost invisibility, so that when you're gone, it still keeps working because you've left a little bit of you.
The legacy. 所以我们刚才问到Robert说，谈到好的团队。这个好团队当然谈过很多次，咪咪也谈到过。这个好的团队很大情况怎么是把这些人凝固在一起？它凝固的精神主要是在于大家有一个共同的信仰。这个信仰就是说，这些人应该是思维上很接近的人，无论是从哪个地方来，哪个国家。但是在做生意上面，如果能够找到就是志同道合的伙伴，在信仰上又很接近的人，那么做起来是有很好的一个凝固力。很大这个信仰是在于这些人相信创造财富这种挑战是最有意义的，而不是说只是一个挣钱赚钱这种情况。但是创造财富是一种精神，这种精神就在于你在也好不在也好，你会有一个传奇性的故事能够传下去，让别人能够分享你的幸福，能够来积极来参加和支持来参与。所以很大情况他觉得他的团队里面有这种精神，咪咪的团队也有这种精神，就是大家来以后有志同道合，有自从的精神。这个精神就是在于创业精神和创造财富的精神，能够把他们团聚在一起，也就是成功的一个保障。而这种呢，也是一个生活中这个创业中的最大的乐趣。这是为什么他喜欢创业和做生意的情况，就是在于这个创造性和这个创业性。谢谢。
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we've come to a time where we can take questions from the floor now.
Mr. Barnes, just following on what you said, that you are not you on your Facebook person. Does that mean that when I asked you to be my LinkedIn partner a couple of months ago, that wasn't you either?
I've only got 3,000 LinkedIn people, and when I get another 20, I'm going to find another meeting. I haven't quite found out how to drive LinkedIn, but it's been I think it must be exponential. The more LinkedIn people you get, the more people you get driven towards you or something. But it's quite interesting. And it's interesting, the statistics are 60% of the 3,000 LinkedIn people that I'm connected with, 60% of them are from the mining industry, and that's sort of probably understandable. The other 40% seem all to be from the IT industry. And there's almost no overlap between those 3,000 in LinkedIn and the 5,500 on Facebook. It's just a totally different set of people. The Facebook stuff is all economics and people that I've met up with through the economic and the world of ideas. But the LinkedIn is really in business. So they're quite separate. The links, aren't they? Quite separate streams. But I'm in the learning process.
It's not easy. Even people of my age, I find it still challenging to how to load the right thing, how to get to the right people. Having someone very technically equipped to help out, that certainly helps influencing your ideas.
Sure.
I just wanted to ask the real question I wanted to ask, sorry, Mr. Manners. It's about actually globalization. In traveling a little bit, what I have realized is that some Asians are pretty catched up, and as you say, Australian households have major debt. Do you think that globalization is actually good for everyone? In Kenya, when my business partner went there, or he went there, a lot of the roads are owned by the Chinese. They've expanded and bought throughout Africa. Is it, should governments encourage more private investment, and how do they ensure that it is best for the interest of the people?
I just personally believe in globalisation. The benefits are, to me, very obvious, and the free trade and free exchange, free investment, back and forth. Everything we buy, it's almost hard to say where it comes from. Everything we buy, a pencil or a pen, that's globalisation in its bit. I mean, a pencil, for instance, every element of it, the rubber comes from somewhere, the brass comes from somewhere else on the end of it, it's just nothing ever is simple. I know there's a bit of an antagonism about iPhones being made in China, but somebody's done a breakdown on where the benefits go to. The benefits go to it's so widespread. And it's almost hard if you analyse where these things come from, the complexity of commerce these days. It's very hard to be anti-globalisation, because the world wouldn't work unless we called upon each other for the various skills that we all have, and we're all different, and we all have different things to offer. And we've got to be open to accept their ideas and their products. Otherwise, they will not be open to accept our ideas and our products.
So the WA is that to join that globalization?
Very much.
Yeah. How much do you think that engagement has gone so far? With how far we moved in that path?
A long way. It was, after the World War II, people wouldn't buy German cars, they wouldn't buy Japanese cars in Australia. Here we are in Australia, we won't buy Australian cars. You want to know how far we've gone?
所以刚才我们讲的是就是商业全球化的问题，因为现在澳洲的很多的经济体系是以借贷为主。这种就是借贷来融资，在亚洲很多是以现金为主，所以表面上会体现出亚洲的人会更富有，而且经济上更强，这是两种不同的体系。但是从整个澳洲来讲，很大的企业现在也走向全球，而且也不在于它选择，是必须要走向全球。要想想10几年前，大部分的2战以后，澳洲人不喜欢开德国车或日本车，不喜欢用其他国家的用品。现在基本上大家不爱用澳洲用品，大部分用品都是从中国其他国家进来的。所以呢，澳洲也是基本上靠近于商品全球化，而且这个呢也是全球的模式，基本上很少说哪个国家不用全球化就能够幸存下来。所以这也是他本人的一个看法。谢谢。So any other questions from the floor? Yes, please.
Thank you. It's really interesting, and I've read this on the back of your flyer. Oh, sorry. And I'm really interested because I think your comments on the global financial crisis are really pertinent and agree wholeheartedly with what you say. So I wonder whether you think that this general lack of anger or insufficient anger to generate any change, do you think that's driven by, for example, perhaps here many people being dependent on very, very poor quality, in my opinion, mass media for their information? Or is it a reluctance to think critically about difficult issues, to look for proper information or reliable information? What do you think it's caused by?
It is on a lack of depth in the reporting thing, because we've had the global financial crisis been floating around since 2007. And then, lo and behold, Greece and Spain, they find they've got problems, and they seek solutions, and you sort of say to yourself, hey, this is not a new phenomenon. Hasn't anyone learnt anything? They're all calling for more spending and more debt, and loading debt upon debt to solve the problem that was created by debt in the first place. So it's a real, somebody's got to ask the question, somebody's got to take the medicine. And in business, and we've got a great system in business in Australia that not a lot of countries have got, in that if we have difficulty running a business, we call in somebody called the administrator. We don't go bankrupt. We don't immediately go. We call an administrator in. He sometimes can take the hard decisions that we as employers can't do because of a lot of very restrictive industrial relations things. He can make these tough decisions and reduce the company down to some core operations. The company then keeps going. They might reconstitute the shares and issue one share for every old 10 shares that they had, but it brings that the company keeps going through all this process and comes out with a chance of surviving again. That's really the model for so many of these countries. That's a model for how they, instead of rescuing those banks, none of those chief executives in all those banks are absolutely buggered up beyond belief. All those chief executives still have got jobs. We didn't learn anything from that. So I think that's, thank you very much for asking that question, because I'm passionate and nothing much has changed. We've still got problems.
And it seems that the media has forgotten that where it started, which is what we're doing.
Yeah. And when you listen to out of Greece and Spain, they just complain that Germany's really a miserable bunch. They won't lend them any money.
Any more money.
Yeah, no more money. Germany's sitting back today going, that's the end of that lot. Somebody's got to say no.
Yeah, but they have forgotten that they actually had 50 or 60 years of very low interest rates to pay back their debt with no reparation after the war. So they were in very fortunate spot.
That's just paid them back.
Yes, after 60 years.
所以刚刚我们讲的就是澳洲的金融体系还有它自己的问题，有些事情已经解决了，有些事情在现在还是有，它是欧洲的这种西方的这种金融体系的问题。有些金融体系，比如说你要看欧洲啊、德国、西班牙，这些问题还存在。所以呢，在他来讲，他要谈到这个话题能讲很多，所以也是欢迎会后跟他进行做一些更多的交流。I think we have a few questions here, but I think we need to start.